Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nathan, and this is a personal update video. We're mostly going to be talking about myself real quick, and we're going to be talking about my finances. Um, I know that sucks. I really don't like talking about this, but I feel like being honest and truthful and transparent is important. So, the most common question I get at the moment is why is the Election Truth Alliance, which I helped co-found back in just after the November 2024 presidential election, why are they not paying me? That's a good question. So here's some background to start. So back in January of 24, the weekend of the certification of the election, I went to Washington, D.C. This was after the Election Truth Alliance had already kind of been founded with me, Lily, Jive working together and, meeting some other awesome volunteers such as David Manasco and beginning to investigate the election, put together a report, release those reports. So in Washington, D.C., the night before certification, January 5th, I went on a live stream with Jessica Denson, her Lights On show on YouTube. And, at this point, I was anonymous. The work I'd been doing, I've been publishing it under my Dire Talks channel, under the ETA, but I didn't have my face on it, didn't really have my name on it. And so, in order to go on her live stream and present the findings that we had on Nevada, where we were talking about election fraud, the requirement was pretty much for me to reveal who I am, my background, my name, my face, because doing this was really the only way it was likely the only way we were going to be received credibly, and it was the only way to really raise awareness for the election concerns we had. And I knew that becoming public was likely going to cost me my job in the cybersecurity field that I worked, but I did it anyways. I knew that was the risk, but I believed what we were doing at the Election Truth Alliance, what I was doing was true, was important, and that we needed to get our concerns out there and we needed to grow. And so here we are, 6 months later, having raised over $300,000 to fight for election integrity. But in order for me to get paid, there's been some hoops the ETA has to jump through. And I'll kind of briefly show you what some of those concerns are. And I will say we're looking at, or the ETA is looking at, a couple more months before it's really likely I'll be able to get paid doing this type of work. But and so here's that. Just the way a nonprofit has to pay people is a little different than what you'd expect. There's requirements where you have to have like certain things. For example, it has to be reasonable, it has to scale off of certain things. And it's not like we had a lot of money to begin with, anyways. And you can't just pay me and not pay like the executive team. And there's three of us. So you'd have to split our salary three ways. And you have to have everything kind of proved and documented. And, there has to be meetings and then it has to be documented as well. So it's actually a lot of work. It's not like you can just pay me and everything's good to go. And so, as I said, we've raised around over $300,000. So that means at most you could pay a executive director somewhere between $70,000. Split that three ways. It's still, a salary, but gets very limited very quickly, and we would be on the low end. So 30,000 split three ways can be around $10,000 or so for a year. With that, 6 months, you're looking at 5,000 or so across 6 months. Sad to say that's really not a lot to live on, but it's better than nothing. Here's the fun part. As I said, we're working on it. We've breached over 300,000 for the ETA. There's some processes going on to get compensation for the executive team going forward as we get into those lawsuits. But let's actually talk a little bit about my background and that. So I think, as I mentioned before, I was working in cybersecurity. I did network administration, data analysis, talked about the dangers of AI and voice cloning. Actually gave like some public briefings and stuff. And so here is my tax return. I'm going to show you my tax returns just to kind of be transparent with you guys. So I was making over $73,000 a year. And this is a little frustrating for me over $73,000, and yet around 8,000 of it was federal income tax. Another 4,500 of it was Social Security, and then another 1,000 was Medicare. But I'm not going to be political in this video. I'm not going to talk about a lot of the other concerns. But I've, sad to say, probably paid more in taxes than some of the top 1% have in just 1 year alone. And that's just my billion pay. On for DFAS, I was making around 1.5 or 15, sorry, $15,000 or so. And then, obviously another 1 to 2,000 in taxes. And this is kind of where the other part comes in. It's been 6 months. I've not had a stable income. My income has come from actually you guys, direct donations. We set up a GoFundMe at the beginning that people were directly donating to, but those funds went to founding the ETA and paying for those startup costs. The ETA obviously has direct donations now through the website, so they take over the funding. That GoFundMe is a little different now. But let's talk about this last part, which is, so here's a letter I get from the IRS, July 21st. And after I had filed my taxes, I still owe around $2,000 in taxes. After having paid over, $10,000? Still owe another almost $2,000 in taxes by November. And so that's just for you guys to kind of look at. As I said, it's a little frustrating. I knew the risks. I knew what I was giving up. I knew I was I wouldn't say throwing away, but I knew that I was giving up and sacrificing over $70,000 a year to gamble and take that risk, launch the ETA, to push for election integrity, to find answers and fight for transparency, and to make sure people are actually getting their choices heard, making sure our elections are being run right. And I don't regret that at all. It's been 6 months, and every day I wake up and I go to work, and I feel like this is what I should be doing with my time. I feel like it's worth it. I feel like there's nothing else I could be doing that would be just as impactful as this. And I feel like we are going places. It's been 6 months, and from day one to today, it went from no one seeing the concerns to thousands, hundreds of thousands, to millions of people potentially are now aware of what we have been highlighting in our work at the ETA. And I am very proud to say that that is going to grow. As we get into these first lawsuits, it's going to get bigger. And I promise you guys that you've donated to me, you've donated to the ETA to fight that fight, and I'm not going anywhere. And so I wanted you to understand where I'm at financially. Not in a great place. Could be worse. My financial situation isn't too bad off. I make through enough direct donations from you guys. Generally speaking, my cost of living is only maybe $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Trying to reduce and cut costs. But, I've got to pay this tax come November, and I probably won't actually get paid from the ETA for another 1 to 2 months. So I'm still heavily dependent on you guys, your direct donations. So hopefully that answers that question. As I said, the way I get direct donations right now is we have a GoFundMe up, which we launched back when we started the ETA. And it raised the original donations to file and organize the organization. It is now converted into, back to a personal GoFundMe for me. So now that, as we said, the direct donations go to my cost of living. So this is one way if you guys do want to kind of pitch in for now until we can get things sorted. This is one way to kind of help support me. Yeah, it's been very limited amount of donations recently, but as I said, anything is better than nothing. I'm so appreciative of you guys. I hate asking for money, hate asking for donations, but hopefully our work speaks for itself. And if you don't want to do the GoFundMe, I do have a Linktree now. It's Nathan Talks, and you've got a few different ways from PayPal to Venmo if you do want to donate directly. But I say all this just because, as I said, we really didn't know where we were going in the beginning. After the election, when I met Lily and Jive and started talking about these concerns, I never once woke up and thought I was going to be fighting for election integrity. Never once woke up and thought that I would question elections. I looked at what happened the last 4 years and the chaos that came from that. And I never once thought that I would be speaking about this and fighting for answers. But right after the election, when everything happened and the math wasn't mathing, I couldn't sit by. I couldn't go back to what I was doing. I couldn't look away after having started diving into what was going on in our country. I believe very deeply in what we're doing. I would rather be nowhere else. And I'll say this last thing. I knew when I was going on Jessica Dinson's show, I knew that I would likely be giving up something that a lot of people would be so grateful for. Having making what I was making would be life changing for a lot of Americans, a lot of people. But I think at the end of the day, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than us. This is a fight that we have to fight now, because if we don't fight this fight and our elections are being manipulated, the midterms is on the line and every election after that. Our country must, our choices must be heard. Our votes must be counted and counted correctly. And our government must represent us. I think that's what's most important, is everything that's happening today brings into question, do the people who are calling the shots actually care about you? Are they actually representing your needs? Are they spending your taxes? Taxes that I've spent a ridiculous amount of taxes, and I'm sure you guys have too. Are those taxes going towards bettering our country and bettering the lives of Americans? Or are they going to the pocket of those who already have far too much? So thank you guys so much. We're going to keep fighting. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to need your help to keep fighting this fight. You can help me fight. If you can donate, please. But don't put yourself in a bad position for me. Thank you so much. And then you guys, you be safe. You be careful. Stay tuned.